Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Grayzone. It's been a minute. I was overseas in Iran, and now I'm back in studio after a warm welcome by the federal authorities, spurred by Israeli assets. We'll talk about that whole scenario and do a report back from Iran as the country returns to a U.S.-imposed war in a minute. Before we do that, and let me just get my notes up here or something. Here they are. So before we get into the discussion of my trip to Iran, the war, and the a looming regional war, which will engulf Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and possibly even the United States and Europe, which is the scenario that I foresee and that many Iranian analysts who are extremely well connected in Tehran, who I spoke to, foresee, and where we'll be joined by my colleague, Wyatt Reed. I wanted to address an issue that's definitely related, that's closer to home here in the Washington area, on Capitol Hill. Senate Democrats, Bernie Sanders and Chris Van Hollen, are actually trying to block a bill that would effectively merge the U.S. military with the Israeli military, a military which has been found by the International Court of Justice and effectively by the ICC of serious war crimes and genocide in the Gaza Strip. It would allow Israel to infiltrate U.S. weapons systems as well as quantum computing, and to put it as succinctly as possible, it would establish a framework for integrating Israeli-developed technologies into U.S. manufacturing. The whole acquisition process, it would be impossible to disentangle the two militaries if this bill passed. Section 224 of the NDAA. And this would apply across all areas of military, autonomous systems, AI, cyber, biotech, missile defense. The whole defense industrial base would be infiltrated and merged with Israel's. It, to me, in my opinion, it establishes the framework for a military coup, and those who vote for this are committing an act of treason. And so I wanted to highlight this bill, which is not getting sufficient attention. And I thought the most appropriate person to discuss this, the most articulate person to discuss this, would be my good friend, former U.S. Representative and Democratic presidential candidate, Dennis Kucinich. Dennis, welcome to the Grayzone.
And welcome home.
Thank you.
It's good to be with you. And you have touched on some of the concerns about this planned merger. The language of the bill, which is now Section 219, because some of the other matters that were in the original bill have been jettisoned. But Section 219 now creates this integration, which is a merger because it eliminates duplications. Think about this. You know, a classic corporate merger eliminates duplications. It integrates functions and would make a profit. In this case, it's Israel that stands to profit from being able to have direct influence over what will unfortunately become a $1.5 trillion annual budget in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027, which is before Congress right now. So this, as you point out, hasn't received a lot of attention, although tonight I understand the Senate made an attempt to bring closure to the NDAA, and that they failed to do that. So there's still a fight in the Senate and the House as to whether the bill, either version of the bill is going to get to the floor of either of the House of Congress. But what they're trying to do is a merger that actually sets the stage for forever wars. And we know, and you probably know better than most people, the extent to which the cooperation has already been very involved, very toxic and murderous. But we're talking about a merger that merges our most sensitive areas. The forever wars include the wars of the future, which are going to be more high tech. You put Israel and the U.S. together in high tech, increasingly high tech wars with genocide as one of the outputs. There's serious legal exposure for U.S. officials because what we have is a direct involvement in genocide, a direct involvement in ethnic cleansing, a direct involvement in theft of land. There hasn't been any public review of this. There's no separate public debates. There's been no hearings. They've just pushed this thing through as a means of trying to create this joinder, which, by the way, the primary author of it was Benjamin Netanyahu. Really?
Well, via Tom Cotton, who's one of the biggest tools of the Israel lobby, and I hear your dog protesting.
This is the dogs of peace here. What do I say? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second.
Who let the dogs in?
Yeah, well, that's true. They asked who let the dogs out sometimes. Hold on.
Well, as we talk with Dennis Kucinich about Section 219, he is taking his dogs out and resituating himself. And Dennis was, I think, just on Tucker to discuss this and has published a great piece outlining the dangers of this bill at Scheer Post, at Bob Scheer's site. And I think Dennis is back. So, yeah, as you were saying, basically Benjamin Netanyahu wrote this bill. I mean, the timing of the bill could not be more telling. It's at a time when U.S.-Israeli relations are shifting because the American public is essentially done with Israel. There's only one constituency left that still supports Israel. It's the over 50 crowd of Fox boomers in the Republican Party. Everyone else is turning away. So what this would do is actually, you could argue, more effective for consolidating the so-called special relationship than close to $400 billion of aid given by the U.S. to Israel since 1948. Is that really what this is about, is preventing the U.S. from ever disentangling itself from this passionate attachment to Israel?
Absolutely. What this does is it, from a practical standpoint, this enables Israel to replenish its weapons under U.S. cover, okay? And it lowers its operating costs for a long war. Now, you pointed out in the introduction how the regional war is moving more and more into regional war. Well, if we look at some of the statements by Israeli officials recently, you see that they're even starting to size up Turkey. They have conflicts over the land in Syria. Each has their own designs on part of it. There's been a cold peace, if you want to call it that, between Israel and Egypt. And the Sinai Peninsula is something that's always in question here as far as Egypt's concerned, or Israel's concerned. So I think that this proposal actually is a schematic for escalation. We're going to have more wars. If this thing goes through, it is guaranteed that the war in Iran will continue, because this is something that Netanyahu and his group see as instrumental in their election, just to keep it going. And I think that we're going to probably be looking at not just a continuation of the war in Iran, but certainly escalations in Lebanon, more ethnic cleansing, more involvement with the settlers and the IDF. This thing opens the door on what already has been a nightmare, and causes a clasping of bloody hands here that will be forever a stain on America. And frankly, it's a question, Max, of our sovereignty. I think this is a blow to American sovereignty. And one final point I want to make. The people on the right who might be in favor of this, well, don't forget for a moment that Israel has been successful in moving our technology to China. And so what are we talking about here? Forget the U.S. liberty, forget what happened at the embassy in Lebanon with the soldiers that were killed, and Israel had advance notice, and on and on and on. And this is who we want for a partner. We should have any partners. Our sovereignty depends on having permanent interest, but not necessarily permanent friends.
And so Israel is one of the most repressive countries on the planet. It presides over a population of occupied people who comprise a majority between the river and the sea. And it is testing its weapons on that population and then exporting them, declaring them field tested. That includes its surveillance tech. Israel's Unit 8200 has strongly infiltrated Silicon Valley with hundreds and hundreds of Unit 8200 veterans. It's even infiltrated the U.S. media through the figure of Barak Ravid at Axios. The infiltration is so deep, but this would take infiltration, Israeli penetration to a new standard. And the question is, under an administration like the Trump administration, which is targeting the left and its political enemies with unprecedented persecution, would this allow the U.S. government to use that Israeli surveillance tech, death tech, against domestic political perceived enemies?
I think it opens up the door for that, because we're not just integrating offensive capacities there. We're importing values.
Yeah.
And when you look at the fact that some of the ICE authorities were trained by the IDF, and actually there's been local police who have gone to Israel for training.
Yeah.
And if we start to merge these technologies, let's take, for example, drones. Okay, the drones could become involved in domestic policing, armed drones. We already see ICE becoming a murderous force on American streets, and if you start to move towards drone policing, because the drones are ubiquitous in Gaza and the West Bank, and they're becoming so in Lebanon. Who says if these are our partners, that won't happen here? We lose control over some basic principles and constitutional rights. And constitutional principles here, Max, are not just the individual articles that we know about, but there's some specifics about the role of a commander-in-chief being able to have jurisdiction over the armed services in times of war, but those members of the armed service take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Israel doesn't even have a constitution; they have basic laws. They're not going to defend the interests of the United States of America. This is really an effort to smuggle in interests that would usurp the American way of life. I mean, we have our problems here, to be sure. And I don't like our policies in the Middle East. I've spent a career in Congress challenging them almost on a daily basis. However, this proposal in Section 219 puts the U.S. and the Israeli government together in a common offensive effort. It promotes weapons endurance, intelligence depth, increases AI targeting capacity. U.S. provides cover for Israel and what they do. There's diplomatic deterrence there. And U.S. you used the word earlier, entangled with Israeli policy, their enemies become our enemies even more so, and America becomes more of a target.
Yeah.
There is nothing about this that is right. If I don't know if you remember. I mean, when I was growing up, you were a little bit younger. I was looking at, you'd look at a comic book and it would have a cartoon that said, find 10 things wrong with this picture. You could find 100 things, 1,000 things wrong with this picture.
Yeah. Well, one other thing would be usurping congressional authority on war powers.
Totally. Because right now, the Congress, by focusing on war powers, the War Powers Act alone, has not been successful. Let's face it. You want to stop a war, cut off funding, period. That's the way you stop wars. Supreme Court, basically understands that in some of their decisions. I've sued 3 different presidents over war powers issues. And the bottom line is cut off the funds. If Israel is inside the government and it's, Israel becomes a partner in the United States Department of War now, we'll never see the end of war, and Congress will not even have any ability to be able to retrieve the policies, because they will have, once this passes, the idea of oversight becomes archaic, because everything about this is opaque. Okay, DARPA, opaque, right? Cyber warfare, opaque. The intelligence, opaque. Strategic development, opaque. So this is strategic entrapment more than anything.
Right. It makes it virtually impossible for for Congress or the American citizen to even know what the military is doing. There's also another section on intelligence integration, where the U.S. is mandated to share unprecedented levels of intelligence with a country, Israel, which is spying on the U.S. at an unprecedented rate. That's according to senior U.S. officials in the Trump administration, who say that Israel is targeting the Trump administration because of its fear that it will pull out of the Iran war, that spying is at critical levels. And this bill mandates that essentially we just hand over national security data.
Well, then they won't have to steal it, right? You just give it away. I mean, what a way to cure spying and kleptomania. So, I think, that's not what we ought to be advocating. But if you go deeper into human rights issues, into morals, into ethics, I know those are ideas that seem to be part of a long ago. But the fact of the matter is, the United States must begin to take care of the violations of law, the open genocide, and the attitude that they don't even care about it anymore. The IDF and the Israeli government, and unfortunately, a lot of the Israeli public supports it. That you cannot be killing people throughout the Middle East region without that actually coming home. It will come home to America. This idea that that's there and that's over there and this is here, oh no. It will affect the lives of each and every person in the United States ultimately. And that's that's still another reason why why we need to stop it, and why we need to raise some serious questions. Is how did this thing get so far without even an open public debate? Just sticking in a bill, smuggling into a bill, and then everything's okay. And Netanyahu was on Meet the Press the other day, extolling the virtues of this bill and how it's just going to be great for Israel and great for the United States. Wow.
He essentially acknowledged that it's unpopular, but it has to be rammed down the throats of the American public just because it's for the greater good. They don't know what they're missing out on by integrating with this genocidal military that's in a permanent state of war, that's waging an 8-front war, and the 8th front is the United States, according to Netanyahu's own words. we have to be propagandized or criminalized and censored into submission. So where does the bill stand with Sanders and Van Hollen working towards closure?
Yeah, it's tethered right now. It's tethered to in the Senate the vote on cloture, and in the House a rule that needs to pass without the Save America Act appended to it. The reason why it went down on the last vote, there has not been a vote alone on Section 219. The administration and congressional leaders have made sure of that. They don't want that. They don't want to put people on Front Street and force them to vote on something that could be interpreted as let's say, a treasonous act against the United States of America. So they want to fold it into the bill. And in both the House and the Senate, they're not there yet. And it's not sure. We're not sure. They may not get there at all. This may be kicked. This may be kicked past recess. And as you know, Max, as it gets closer to an election, politicians become ever more risk averse. And it's not just on this issue, but a lot of issues we don't even know about that people will say, well, I don't know, let's wait till after the election. That's where the push is coming right now. And I think the public, anybody out there who has a concern about this, and everyone should be concerned about it, because it takes away our sovereignty and our ability to make decisions on what's best for America, not any other country. Call your member of Congress, your senator, and just say, look, vote against the NDAA. Vote against the entire thing if it includes this provision, because this provision undermines our country. And there's plenty of reason, by the way, Max, to vote against the NDA in and of itself. $1.5 trillion annually, a 66 2/3% increase over the 2006 bill, and 80% now of our domestic spending goes for war. So we're becoming an armed camp, and then we're going to have a partner who specializes in genocide. Wow, what a deal for Americans on our 250th anniversary as a republic. Wow. No, we can't let this happen. And there needs to be a pushback all over this country. People need to understand the nation's at risk here. And this isn't hyperbole. This is a fact. It's not that the sky is falling. It's getting closer to us.
Couldn't have put it better. Get on the phone. Do what you can to put pressure on your legislator. We might head up to Capitol Hill tomorrow to ask some questions, and maybe we'll pass by Lindsey Graham's house. I don't know what's going on there. What I do know is there aren't going to be as many mourners as I saw in Tehran for their leader. I wanted to ask you just quickly one or two questions about the political future we face here, since you were a presidential candidate, a mayor, you were in the House of Representatives, and you were in the Democratic Party, and you were one of probably the last Democrats that I would ever potentially get behind. What do you think of Ro Khanna and even Rahm Emanuel, who lost part of his finger in a kitchen incident in Israel while he was volunteering with the Israeli military, taking a much harder line against Israel and pushing some sort of reorientation of the U.S.-Israeli relationship? Does this spell an actual change of policy within the Democratic Party, or are they simply trying to paper over the contradiction between a Democratic Party base, a constituency that wants real sanctions on Israel, that wants a real arms embargo, and a leadership that is in thrall to the donor class, including AIPAC?
Well, there's two different people you mentioned, and
they're definitely different. But
I served with Rahm Emanuel, and I think I understand him very well.
Yeah,
he is one of the most skillful politicians that I've ever met. He really is slick, but that's not necessarily a compliment. What I'm saying is that he can read the room better than most people. He was very successful in helping guide Clinton and others along the way. He's got an instinct for politics, so he sees which way it's going. But there is this question of where he's been, and that he would have to defend his previous positions. And, I think that he would find it a little bit difficult the way the Democratic Party is moving as of late. Ro Khanna is newer to this, and he's being challenged right now from the left on the question of, is this just a form of liberal Zionism? But I think it's important that he has teamed up with Tom Massey because he has given the gloss of a bipartisan effort to Tom Massey's efforts. Massey is one of the most unique politicians who has come by in maybe in this generation, because he is not, he's unbought, he's unbossed, and he has frontally challenged these very interests that we're talking about here. So, where do I think all this is going? Look, Rahm Emanuel has the connections and the understanding to be a serious candidate. I don't know, however, that given his history, how far he's going to be able to go.
Yeah. And what do you make of plans for this? I don't even know if I can call it plans, but discussions by Tucker Carlson and others for a potential third party, which will unite the parts of the Republican and Democratic constituencies who are sick of being cucked by Israel and merging the U.S. military with Israel, who are opposed to the massive expansion of data centers. So many other so many other viewpoints that transcend partisan lines can be advocated for within a third party. There is potential for bringing figures like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and even Ro Khanna has kind of shown some sympathy to this idea of putting that forward. And would you participate in any initiative like this in the 2028 election?
Look, you remember that it was just a couple of years ago I ran for Congress as an independent. I may have had a chance to get elected as a Democrat, but I think this two-party system needs to be challenged because it has become a duopoly, and with interest groups buying both parties, and there really not being much of a difference between the two. So I think that Tucker Carlson has ignited a national conversation that is long overdue, and that he's done it with integrity. He has, sometimes it's the question that saves the country. Sometimes people are just asking, why are we doing this? Starts to create the discussion. And he's been building that discussion. So will there be another political party? I don't know, but look, what's happening from the left and the right, the people are seeing a unity of interest here on the U.S. Constitution, on freedom of speech, on right to be secure in our persons against unreasonable search and seizure. You know a little bit about that recently. On equal protection of the law. And so I think we're seeing people understanding that those things that we believe in with respect to America are under threat. And it's no longer about whether you're a Democrat or Republican. There's something higher here connected to the mythology of America, the America we want to see unfold, we think could happen, but we can't do it from one partisan pose as opposed to the other. So I think the polarization that has characterized our politics over the last decade and more, I think we're starting to see a knitting together of certain interests that go across party lines that could result in an independent movement, not necessarily a party.
Yeah.
It could result in an independent movement whose exemplars could come from some of the names that you mentioned. And so I would say that keep your eye on that because you could see a very, not only powerful challenges within the party, but should those challenges fail to usurp the entrenched party interest, you could see going in and then going out. And 2028 could be a year that could be one of the most volatile election years we've had since 1968. But in terms of party politics, the political machines could be more vulnerable than they were when Ross Perot made his entrance and made the economics of trade his issue. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, do I have hope that we can get through this? Yes, but there is this thing about stopping the escalation of these wars. If this administration keeps dropping bombs in and around nuclear facilities in Iran, and these aren't nuclear bomb facilities, they're nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
And they dropped the one near Bashir. If they keep doing this, they could ignite something that gets out of control very quickly. We are not guaranteed our lives here in this country from a distance if we continue to participate in the visiting of death and destruction throughout the Middle East and the wider region. So, and our politics need to catch up and get away from this idea of that we can achieve peace through war. This is we need to have a policy of strength through peace. Get away from this peace through strength, and understand that America can no longer pretend that it is the champion and king of a unipolar world. That the multipolarity of this world has unfolded very powerfully. It's doing it economically. Our economic situation is very tenuous right now with the amount of our bonds losing their elasticity, people dumping U.S. currency, the yuan starting to become the basis of trade for energy. Hey, we ought to be worried about that because our whole way of life is built on this expanding of an economy, and it could implode if we keep pursuing these wars.
I think the impact of the wars is beginning to devastate the U.S. economy, and not just the Iran war, the closure or disruption at the Strait of Hormuz, but also the endless Ukraine proxy war and its escalation by Trump is making the price of oil, driving the price of oil through the roof. It's contributing to the high price of Brent crude right now. These drone attacks on Russian oil facilities, the oil shortage in Russia. And the American public isn't being made aware that these neocon wars are affecting them at the pump, affecting their own basic kitchen table concerns. And I think that could be the role of an independent movement or a cross-partisan third party. I think what an independent movement needs to do is set certain benchmarks for candidates and tell people do not vote for them if they don't meet those benchmarks. That's why I told people Kamala Harris must lose, because she supported the genocide. The message must be sent. If you support this, we will walk away. And that needs, we need to hold fast to those principles. So it's basically a movement based on certain principles that refuses to fall for the culture war manipulations that are always used to polarize and drive people to vote for these pro-war, neoliberal, corporatized con artist candidates. That's what I would like to see, and I would love to see you be a part of that.
I intend to be, and where I come from is to challenge this whole idea about the necessity of war. War is not inevitable. Peace is inevitable. If you start to explore the science of human relations and seeing other people as our equals, and seeing other people as, understanding that we're all interconnected, we're interdependent, we're interconnected. It's not about one world. It is about understanding that there are people like us all over the world. They have the same aspirations as we have for our families, for our loved ones, for our friends, for solid communities, for housing, for education, for our children being able to blossom. And when you see these children and families being devastated and being murdered en masse in the West Bank and Gaza and in South Lebanon and beyond, in Yemen, what are we about? I mean, we have ventured into an epoch which annihilates the very foundation of laws which were about protecting humanity from these very things. You go to Congress, around the border of the House of Representatives, they have all these famous lawmakers, okay? Moses, Hammurabi, on and on. But here, we're vitiating all of the moral principles that underpinned those laws. And if we don't have anything like that anymore, then people start to justify mass murder on a scale that the world hasn't seen. And we think, well, it couldn't happen. Oh, yes, it can. It's happening actually right now. It's happening. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been murdered, and it's hard. I will tell you, I don't know how it is for you. I could imagine, but just for me, when I wake up every morning, a day doesn't go by when I don't think of the fact that at that very moment somebody's being killed over in another country with the resources that come from the United States of America. America must change its position in the world, and we need to try to become a benign influence, not again, but to become a benign influence. And we're not there right now. And things like this attempted merger between the Israeli and the United States military would be a nail in the coffin of our freedom, frankly, and of our sovereignty, and would put us in a direction that it's like we're a remake of the movie Minority Report or something.
Yes. As if it isn't already bad enough. Section 219 is cancer. Prevent the cancer.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. And when it passes, all the worst warnings that Dennis Kucinich issued tonight will come to pass, and we will pay the consequence. So do what you can to prevent this from happening. Prevent the cancer from seeping in to any further into the American body. Dennis Kucinich, former U.S. representative, former U.S. presidential candidate, maybe possible future U.S. presidential candidate. I don't know, but certainly a real, rare servant of the people and freedom fighter. Thank you for joining us at the Grayzone.
Thanks so much, Max Blumenthal. Thanks to everyone who cares about our country. Thank you.
See you again soon. All right. Well, that's just a warm-up. We have so much more to cover. And if I get around to it tomorrow, maybe I and some colleagues will go up on Capitol Hill and ask questions about Section 219 of anyone who's wearing the congressional pin on their lapel. They tend to run away. There's been no debate on this. There hasn't been much of a discussion. You don't hear it discussed on Meet the Press. The media isn't exactly holding their feet to the fire, but this will consolidate Israeli control over the United States. And the U.S. military I don't even know if the U.S. military favors this. I don't even know if the Joint Chiefs favor this. Remember, it was Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, who was warning about the potential consequences of Trump going to war on Iran back in February. Trump did it anyway because he was taking instructions from Netanyahu, who sat at the head of the table in the Situation Room in the White House last February, along with his Mossad chief, who was beamed in to tell Trump how it was going to be. And he gave Trump the playbook. Trump followed it, and now here we are. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The price of Brent crude is above 85 a barrel. And guess who's coming back to Washington this Wednesday, I think? Benjamin Netanyahu, to give more instructions to his son, Donald Trump. That's what's being reported, that Benjamin Netanyahu is coming back to Washington to issue instructions. This is like, this is the final... This is like the final act in Benjamin Netanyahu's political life, and he's got Trump by the short and curlies. So I was in Iran for a week. It was a really momentous week. It felt like a month. I barely slept. There's a lot to talk about. I gained insights that I could not have by being here, and was willing to face the potential for repression on my way back, and that's what I received. And someone who has also come back from the region is my colleague Wyatt Reed, who's here with us. What's up, Wyatt?
How's it going, Max? That was an incredible interview.
Dennis never disappoints. He's one of the most charismatic figures I've seen in American politics, and he doesn't really get his due. Like, just seeing him as a public speaker, he doesn't need dual teleprompters like Obama. His charisma is completely natural, and it comes from a place of righteous indignation in the tradition of William Lloyd Garrison and Eugene Debs, Abraham Lincoln, MLK, and the prophets of American politics, which is why the media demonized and vilified him and branded him like a vanity candidate when he ran in 2004. But it was a real honor to host him here at the Grayzone. And it's good to have you back in the U.S. I guess you were coming in from Lebanon. How was your trip back?
Exactly. I just got back in earlier today. Not as eventful of a homecoming as yours, but I was also subjected to about 2 hours delay, secondary screening. They wanted to question me. That's the first time that's happened to me. I know it was obviously quite a bit worse for you, but just on the topic of Kucinich, I mean, I'm blown away. It's easy to forget that we at some point in the not so distant past actually had someone like that in Congress. Of course, today we have people like Massey, or at least we do for the next few months. But I just the very unflinching enunciation of just the basic principles of humanity is something that the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's something that is completely absent from our government, but it was a timely reminder that that's not an impossible thing to ask, and it's actually really the most basic thing that we should be asking from our ruling class.
Yeah, during his presidential campaign, Kucinich actually proposed a Department of Peace, which would work towards real diplomacy, unlike the State Department, to prevent war. Now we have a U.S. Institute of Peace, which is actually a soft power appendage of the State Department, which under Democrats promotes color revolutions and infiltrates societies, funds opposition movements to wage coups. It's not an Institute of Peace. And then Trump basically took control of it and used it as a forum to host the launching of the Board of Peace, which is actually the Board of Ethnic Cleansing and Genocide in Gaza, as well as a board of corruption, where figures like Gianni Infantino of FIFA pay $1 billion in order to curry favor with the United States, and then the U.S. gets to reverse red card decisions during FIFA matches, while Infantino and FIFA actually participate directly in the Gaza genocide by promoting phony normalization initiatives in areas that have already been ethnically cleansed. The whole concept of peace has been twisted in, I hate to say, Orwellian fashion, because it's a little bit played out, but Dennis Kucinich is someone who represents a true tradition of peace. And having a Department of Peace, it was sort of laughed at, and I think that's so revealing of the political class, of the Beltway class, that laughed at it and mocked it, because the consequences of war beginning to hit home. It's going to get a lot worse. If you're watching right now, go out and buy gas while you can, while it's still at the terrible level it's at, because the price is going to get worse, because the neocon wars are escalating. Donald Trump is the third coming of Bush's second term on steroids. He's actually possibly worse for peace with Russia or an end to the Ukraine-Russian proxy war than Joe Biden would have been. And the Iran war has restarted. A couple hours ago, Iran's negotiating team led by Mohammad Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Parliament, I believe announced that the MOU is over. It never began. Trump immediately violated 8 points of the 14 points, starting with constantly threatening to destroy Iran. It was always a scam, but now it's over. War has begun. And as I said before, I believe the war will engulf the region this time.
Well, we've already seen Saudi Arabia and Yemen drawn into it. So it's already expanded beyond the scope of what it was the last several rounds. So, who's to say exactly where it's going to end this time?
Yeah, I was able to actually interview and meet with several members of the Ansar Allah Yemeni delegation in Tehran. A member of their delegation told me that they were under blockade, including by air. They flew to Tehran on Mahan Airlines, which is an Iranian airline. And as they boarded their plane, there were several drones overhead, attack drones, and they had very good reason to be concerned that they were going to be either attacked on the ground or as the plane was taking off. And the Yemeni military scrambled 3 fighter jets to protect them. They flew out under those conditions and they flew back. In order to return, they broke the blockade. And now, and then Saudi Arabia proceeded to attack them, and they responded pretty strongly. I asked them, what conditions would you close the Bab el-Mandeb? And, are you prepared for the eventuality of war? And the response, I'll ultimately publish these. I'm working through so many interviews, but the response was, we've already closed the Bab el-Mandeb at various points. So we're prepared to completely close it off.
When it's closed to Israeli shipping completely.
Yeah, they closed it to Israeli shipping, but to all shipping would be a major card to lay on the table for the axis of resistance. They told me the axis of resistance has been granted, each partner has been granted more flexibility than in the past to make their own decisions. And that they're fully prepared for war with the Saudis. But this is only, but these wars are only to prevent a real track for peace, which starts with the recognition of the government in Sana'a as a legitimate government, and that's something Saudi Arabia and the U.S. refused to do. But the response has been pretty hard. So it looks like that's the next phase. Iraq is moving towards conflict. The new prime minister is in town to meet Donald Trump. He has demanded that the PMF, the Popular Mobilization Forces, give up their weapons by September, which kind of charts a timeline for possible war in Iraq. And U.S. CENTCOM has announced a resumption of the blockade on Iranian shipping. This is U.S. CENTCOM. Today at 4 p.m., resumed the naval blockade against vessels transiting to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas. There are currently more than 20 U.S. Navy warships and hundreds of U.S. military aircraft operating across the Middle East. So the war is focused heavily on the south, almost exclusively on the south. I was in Tehran. Tehran was basically normal while I was there. There was no bombing. The bombing was around Bushehr, Bandar Abbas, Sirik Island, Keshem Island, and Karg Island has just been attacked with 7 projectiles hitting oil and water facilities. So the U.S. is attacking Iranian vital infrastructure, which means that Iran can and likely will attack the infrastructure of Gulf countries, especially the UAE and Bahrain. Iran has been attacking U.S. bases in Jordan with more ferocity than I think we saw in the past, probably because they're either rebuilding bases or these are just new targets that have come online. But the U.S. is focusing on the Strait of Hormuz, attacking radars, surveillance facilities, and trying to sort of dislodge Iran's control of the strait. Where do you see this going?
Well, it's obviously a major escalation. The attacks on Karg Island are a huge red line for the Iranians. The Americans know exactly how the Iranians will respond. They're going to hit back hard at oil and energy infrastructure. Who knows exactly where in the Gulf, but it's coming. And obviously, this is why they're so desperate to force these fake ceasefires and peace agreements in Lebanon, for example, that involve total disarmament, unilateral disarmament by resistance forces. The same thing in Iraq. They want for these resistance forces to unilaterally disarm. I was attempting to organize an interview with some of these PMF hushed forces. I never got a formal one, but I was able to speak with representatives on background, and they made it extremely clear that that's not going to happen. The same way that Hezbollah won't lay down their arms, because the threat.
You were, sorry to just interrupt, but just to tell our audience, you were just in Iraq.
Yes, I was in
Najaf and Karbala
earlier this week, while you were witnessing the funeral for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Iran. I was in Iraq. So the world's largest funeral, obviously, something like 40 million people came out to attend. 10 million of those were in Iraq. 7 million of them were in Karbala, which is this kind of basically the cradle of Shia Islam. Sort of the battle of Karbala is in many ways the birthplace of Shiaism. It's one of the holiest places on earth for them, because that is where the Imam Hussein, the Prophet's grandson, basically gave his life knowing that he would die, him and 72 of his companions, and gave themselves up, knowing that their message would resonate. And today, 1,300 some years later, there are now 200 million Shia Muslims, and it was hard to avoid the historical parallels with how the U.S. executed and assassinated Khamenei in cold blood. People are angry, and you can speak probably better to this about how it was in Iran, but people were angry, and they want revenge in many cases, and at the bare minimum, they want for this to never happen again to them and their people.
Yeah. That was the key theme of my trip, or what I saw in Iran. The theme could be boiled down to one word, which is revenge. And we've seen the red flag of revenge go up before, after Qasem Soleimani's killing, for example. But Qasem Soleimani, while a beloved figure, a figure who many Iranians credit with saving their country from being swamped by ISIS fanatics or by the U.S., invaded by the U.S. following the Iraq War, he was a military official. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was a cleric who was a guide and kind of considered a father by tens of millions of Shia believers. He was someone who was, his stature and significance can't be overstated. And to kill him on the opening day of a war in his office with his family, it electrified the Shia masses, but this funeral brought the simmering rage of his killing back to the surface at a time when Iran was negotiating. There's some, crackling sounds. I don't know if you're doing something over there. At a time when Iran was in the middle of negotiations with his killers, and basically made it clear that these negotiations would not be accepted by the revolutionary core of the Iranian public. The main constituency of the Islamic Republic was just not going to accept it. And everywhere I went, I heard people wanted to emphasize to me that they wanted hard revenge for this. They wanted to go well beyond where their government wants to go to get revenge for this. And it centers on Trump, but it goes well beyond Trump. It centers on Trump. I'll play one of the more memorable calls for revenge that I recorded during a sort of spontaneous rally in Tahrir Square in Tehran. This was just one of the women I met who'd been coming out to these rallies for over 120 nights throughout the war, where Iranians just want to show their presence in the street, show that they're not intimidated, show that they support their military and their government as the U.S. was attempting, along with Israel, to destroy their society.
Hey, Trump, pay attention to this note, okay? This is my bracelet. It's one of the millions ladies' bracelet and gold that they're gonna pay this. And this is the price for the person who will kill you. Because you just not kill Mr. Khamenei. You kill her heart. You kill her father. You kill her imam. You know, you have to pay for that. This is blood for the blood. This is the price of the person who will give to the person who will kill you.
And so she was basically saying they're collecting gold bracelets in order to basically put up a bounty for Trump. And it's just a popular initiative. And then here you can see one of the banners that was over a major bridge and roadway in Tehran. I don't know who put up the banner. This was on the third day of the Khamenei funeral, and crowds were moving down Azadi Boulevard, which is the longest boulevard in Tehran, towards Azadi Square, where the main ceremony would take place. Khamenei's coffin was there for only about an hour, I think, possibly to prevent stampedes and large crowds. But as soon as people saw this banner of Trump with a bullet whizzing towards his head, this was how they reacted. So Sitara, I interviewed Sitara Sadeghi, who's a academic we've interviewed here on the Grayzone many times at the University of Tehran, about what all of this meant. And I think she put it into a much more complicated context and explained that there's a whole debate about how to respond and what revenge really means. And that revenge does not necessarily mean targeting Trump or Netanyahu, and that, in her opinion, it would only mean that would only mean like removing a figurehead for a system that would still be intact. And I think her opinion reflects more of the mainstream opinion, but there's just so much simmering anger that, when Masoud Pezeshkian, the president, came into the streets for the funeral, he was basically run out by crowds screaming at him over the negotiations. I just heard so much anger about negotiating with the killers of so many Iranian leaders. I went to the Imamzadeh mosque that night after the funeral, and I'd been there a year before to see the grave of Fakhrizadeh, Mohammed of Fakhrizadeh, the nuclear scientist who's considered sort of the Oppenheimer of Iran, who was killed by a remote-controlled machine gun placed by the Mossad on a roadway in 2011, I believe, to assassinate him. And there was, like a janitor washing his grave because people come to pour rose water on it constantly and to pay homage to him. But the walls of this shrine were now adorned with the portraits of the commanders and politicians and leaders of Iran beyond Khamenei. They were all across the walls. This was not there before. Just the whole pantheon of Iranian leadership had been assassinated, and people felt stripped bare, and they wanted to attain justice by returning the favor to Trump, to Trump's inner circle, to his family, to the figures who conceived the policy of maximum pressure, Brian Hook, Mike Pompeo, those who were responsible for the killing of Soleimani, they're responsible for the killing of Speaker of Parliament Ali Larjani. Lindsey Graham, for example, we'll talk about him later. And this this wasn't, it just wasn't, you just had to be there to understand it, to see how large the funeral was. By the time I got there, it was like the end of the day. The coffin was long gone and people were just continuing to pour in.
In Karbala, we were supposed to, the coffin was supposed to enter the city at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
But because there were so many people packed into the streets, just layer and layer and row after row of people, the funeral procession was only able to advance at about 1 mile per hour maximum.
Yeah.
So the coffin didn't arrive until about 2 in the morning. So it was took about 10 hours longer than it was supposed to, just because so many people were there and so many people wanted to come and get as close as they could. And if not touch the coffin, then just be near it and get a glimpse, one last glimpse at the now departed leader.
Let's play your report from Karbala, just so people get a sense of what you saw as millions were mourning outside Iraq. This was the largest, possibly the largest human gathering in history. I can't think of any larger gathering. It certainly was larger than any gatherings in the US, which tend to be like Woodstock 2, Lollapalooza, Burning Man. This was, I mean, you can see alone in Karbala, it was larger than those. Here's your report.
This is the moment that millions of people have been waiting for, the arrival here in Karbala, Iraq, of the slain leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is not just the leader of Iran, but a massively important spiritual leader for all Shia Muslims. Here in Karbala, in the year 680 AD, this was the site of the most famous battle in Shia history, the Battle of Karbala, in which the Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, was brutally murdered by a corrupt, tyrannical leader, a leader who lived a degenerate, opulent lifestyle, who forced those around him to submit to loyalty oaths, who crushed dissent with an iron fist. Now, nearly 1,400 years later, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is arriving, having faced a very similar fate at the hands of another corrupt, brutal, tyrannical leader who is known for crushing dissent, who lives an opulent, degenerate lifestyle, who forces those around him to submit to loyalty oaths. They say that history does not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes, and it is rhyming here tonight in Kabul.
Intense. Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're trying to do a stand-up in such a intense environment with so much sound, you can risk looking kind of crazy on camera.
Yeah. Well, I was screaming because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be heard. It was just like this wall. Once the coffin came around the corner, it was like this wall of noise erupted around me, and I just assumed that if I didn't yell, I wouldn't be able to be heard over the roar of the crowd.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing in Engelhab Square, which is where Iranians, supporters of the Islamic Republic, have been gathering night after night over 120 nights to chant. And basically, it is kind of like it's kind of like, I don't know what to compare it to.
There is no compare. We have no point of reference.
There's no point of reference. It's like a revolutionary rave. I mean, and the chanting, they have a new chant every night. The sound is so intense, but it's infectious. There's this music that you hear in southern Iraq and across Iran called damam, which refers to this big drum, and it aims to recreate the sounds of the Battle of Karbala. I actually got to sit in with a damam troupe in Tahrir Square, and they just crank this music over loudspeakers and chant over it.
And all of the the Shia guys are doing Latmiya, and they're chanting along with this kind of, it's like religious techno. I don't know how to describe it really, but it's very overwhelming when you're around it, especially when it's that many people. And it's just, there were 6 or 7 different processions where it's, each one has 20 massive amps, and you can hear it from miles away. and it fills every corner of the city with this, this very spiritually significant, resounding sort of, it was a wall of sound.
In the Mosala on the first day, I entered from a car with Professor Mohammed Marandi to a point where we could walk, and we walked towards the Mosala, the Grand Mosque, got in, I got in with my press pass, and we walked in, and, Marandi's so soft-spoken and erudite, and we're focused on our conversation. We were talking about years and years of failed diplomacy, or deliberately failed U.S. diplomacy with Iran, the legacy of Khamenei, the Iran-Iraq war, so many issues. And then when I get into the Grand Mosque, it's just gigantic patio, and there's water spraying to keep people cool, which kind of creates a almost mystical rainbow effect. There are red flags fluttering everywhere, people ascending stairs, going up and down, and tens of thousands of people chanting. There's mournful singing reverberating, and there were some interviews and conversations that I had with, I would say, principlist politicians and figures on that end of the spectrum, where I would not place Marandi, who would just come out and say, it's time to eliminate Trump as revenge. And it was like, I was not ready for that, but that was the call. And, people with handmade signs, blood for blood. So this really, to me, is the story. I think this is not an official policy. Actually, I was able to interview the mayor of Tehran, Ali Reza Zaghani, who is a conservative politician, someone who's been a critic or even an opponent of the MOU. He ran in the last presidential election and was hammering Pezeshkian during the debates. He's a critic of the reformists. And I asked him, I put it to him. You can go to our YouTube channel and watch this. We just put up a short of this part of our interview, or just watch the full interview. And I should also mention Zaghani was a very close friend of Ibrahim Raisi, the president who died in a helicopter crash, and was a friend of Qasem Soleimani. So, he's a major national figure. And he was the mayor of the city that presided over this gigantic gathering, which saw all of these calls for personally retaliating against Trump. I put it to him, is this an official policy? Like, is it now the Iranian policy to take out Trump, as Trump believes? And he said that, we have to essentially respect the sacred pain of the Iranian public after having their leader killed. But, towards the end of his comments, he sort of backed away and said the real revenge will be carried out by removing the U.S. from the region and reorienting our relationship, consolidating Iran's place as a great nation. And I think that is the official policy. I mean, if a reformist said that to me, I wouldn't trust them. But this is not someone from the reformist sphere. This is someone who's much closer, I think, to the revolutionary base. And so I don't think there's an official policy. But as Mustafa Hoshesh, who is one of the most connected Iranian analysts and journalists, said to me in an interview, I've released part 1, I'll release part 2 soon. You have millions of people who are infuriated with righteous anger, who are hunting for Donald Trump now. Trump has unleashed that anger with this killing that is not properly understood. And who knows what could potentially happen. And why did Donald Trump do this? Why did he kill Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? Because Netanyahu told him to. So essentially, Donald Trump has been following an Israeli script that has placed him in a cycle of escalation to the point where he believes that his own life is in danger. And so, in so many ways, Israel has indirectly put crosshairs on Donald Trump's face. Donald Trump bears responsibility for following that script. We've been told by the Israel lobby for 30 years that there is no linkage between the U.S. special relationship in Israel and the threat of quote unquote terrorism facing the U.S., that 9/11 had nothing to do with the U.S. relationship with Israel, even though al-Libi said that he was radicalized by the Israeli massacre at Qana during Operation Grapes of Wrath in 1996, when Israel massacred women and children in a shelter in southern Lebanon, that's what brought him into Al-Qaeda. And now you have these calls for revenge like I've never seen before that have totally reshaped the politics of Iran, contributed to the shattering of the MOU. And I think this will resonate for a generation. And we have Israel to blame, along with the president who was a vehicle for Israeli influence, Donald Trump, who has no way out of this war, who's still violating every red line and has no guarantee or vision for achieving any military or strategic objective. And it's escalating in Yemen and will soon move to Iraq, I believe.
Well, Trump and those around him have been claiming for years now that he is somehow the target of various farcical sounding assassination plots allegedly orchestrated by the IRGC, but it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's,
yes.
You take these non-existent threats and then you respond to them by assassinating spiritual and political leaders, and then you make the threat real. And then someone like you goes to Iran to just explain why it is that people feel this way and to show how they feel. And rather than taking the time to thank you for this invaluable journalism, a broad sector of the political spectrum decided instead to tar you as, I think the term was a rat-faced communist traitor, was from
Laura
Loomer, herself a real looker, by the way.
Yeah.
But I mean, tell us a little bit
about. Before we go there, just one last point. You know, I think it would be strategically unwise for Iran to personally target Trump, and I think they understand that at the official level. And I just think that this is what Israel wants, which is why right after this funeral, Israel warned Trump of alleged Iran plot to assassinate him, claiming it came from the highest level. Israel's been doing this for years, since it compelled or convinced Trump to assassinate Qasem Soleimani. And this is what Israel wants, because it will guarantee escalation. They didn't want the MOU, and there's no more MOU.
And then Trump responded by claiming that if he is assassinated, he will he's gonna nuke Iran.
He said there would be thousands of strikes on Iran.
Yeah.
And the fact is, the people who want this kind of revenge don't care. They already experienced thousands of strikes. They already saw their children killed in Minab and elsewhere. I saw so many, war crimes sites when I was in Iran. And there's a part of the public that is just willing to keep going in order to get what they perceive as justice. And this is something that Trump has unleashed.
Well, yeah, plenty of people in Iran are willing to tolerate it. Plenty of people in Israel desperately want it. And if they have a guarantee that by assassinating Trump, they can ensure permanent war with Iran, and Trump is basically saying, look, we're going to put the war machine on autopilot and just allow them to massacre as many Iranians as possible. If I am, subject to assassination, you are basically giving Israel everything that it could possibly want and incentivizing them to assassinate you. So
That's the other point that I saw a lot of people make, was that, you know, there would be no better time for Israel to execute a plot against Trump through a proxy agent posing as an Iranian IRGC operative,
which we know that they have, and which we've seen them carrying out attacks all across Western Europe, all across Australia. These plots that, you know, Australian intelligence.
These are low-level arson attacks and
sure, but they clearly are willing to carry out false flag attacks and blame Iran. That MO has been very clearly established, and we know that that's what happened because these various intelligence agencies have said that we deduced that it was a foreign intelligence agency behind these attacks in our countries, and then they refused to say which foreign nation it was. And if it was Iran, they would say that. They would obviously tell us if it was Iran behind these attacks. So we can kind of deduce from the fact that they won't tell us which foreign nation carried out these arson attacks, that it means it was Israel.
And these were the justification. This was the justification cited by the British government, the most repressive British government in history, for listing the IRGC as a terrorist organization, a key initiative of Israel in order to prevent normal relations between the UK and the British government. The IRGC is essentially the Iranian military. So now the UK is in a de facto state of war with Iran, thanks to these phony attacks in which apolitical criminal class young men were delivered crypto payments by shadowy foreign sources to conduct vandalism crimes against, you know, Jewish targets or the Israeli consulate. And then they were passed off as the handiwork of something called Ashab al-Yamin through a strange Telegram account. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on. AVIO.
None of which had any casualties, right?
No casualties. No. Same thing that happened in Australia has been happening in the UK and across certain parts of Europe. So, yeah, we're entering a very dark time, and I think it's clear to so many people what's happening, but you're not allowed to say it. If, for example, RT, Russia Today, reported on it or provided some analysis about what's really happening, if you share that analysis in the UK now, you will go to jail. You're not allowed to share anything from RT, and you're not allowed to praise the IRGC in the UK. You will go to jail. You could go to jail for 14 years. This was all justified based on
and you'll be sentenced as a terrorist by us, you know, under a secret designation that whatever jury judges you won't be told about, as happened to the Felton 24.
Yes, and we, you know, the architecture of repression is expanding. We broke the story of Fergie Chambers, pro-Palestine financier, donor, who's sending enormous amounts of money to humanitarian initiatives in Gaza. The Samir Project has credited him with keeping many families alive. He's an heir to the Cox family fortune, a conservative telecommunications tycoon family, I think based in Atlanta. And, you know, he took $250 million and used it to support pro-Palestine causes. He's openly communist. He's been arrested in Spain on Department of Justice orders for supposedly money laundering. We saw the sealed indictment. It looked bogus. And this is just another casualty of the globalization of the war on Palestine solidarity, which, you know, you could say maybe it started with the crackdown on the encampments, but now it's going global under the Trump administration. And the repression is tightening. And I would say that I've been targeted through this framework of repression. And it started with my arrival in Iran. I was there as a reporter on a press visa, the same press visa that was granted to reporters like NBC's Richard Engel or CNN's Frederick Fleitgen, who I joined at a press conference last Wednesday at the Iranian Foreign Ministry, headed by Dr. Esmail Bagai, the Foreign Ministry spokesman. And they got in questions and I got in a question. They always say, like, we're here with the permission of the Iranian government, but we maintain our editorial independence. We never say this when we go to Israel, and as the Israeli government forces us to sign a military censorship policy, but we're saying it in Iran.
And we have to submit all of our reports to them in advance to make sure we didn't accidentally say anything inappropriate.
You literally have to do that in Israel. The Iranians don't make them do that. They confronted Bagai and, were very critical to him, as they would be to an American, maybe to an American State Department spokesperson, but they were probably less confrontational to the State Department. But, this is tolerated. The Iranian Foreign Ministry wants them in there. The whole time he was jousting with them about the stupidest issues. I think the CNN guy asked, are you really like destroying the MOU by attacking shipping in the Strait of Hormuz? Did you read the MOU? I think it's point 5, which makes Iran responsible for managing the Strait of Hormuz. Ships aren't allowed to try to skirt Iranian control by sailing close to the shores of Oman. That's a deliberate provocation tactic in order to break the MOU. And then the U.S. had, broken 8 other points. I don't know if they're confronting them the same way, but the point is they're given full latitude to do the reporting they want to do and to challenge Iranian officials.
And then they can come back to the U.S. and they face zero problems.
Exactly.
Nobody bats an eye.
So I haven't been able to ask any of them, did you have your devices seized when you came back to the U.S.? Were you taken to secondary screening? But I would assume, especially because Trump is president, that they would protest and raise hell if this took place. And we haven't heard anything from all these American reporters coming back. So I was targeted when I arrived in Iran, not by any U.S. element, but by an appendage of Israeli intelligence called Canary Mission, which most of you watching all know is like a doxing website that was established in 2015 to ruin the lives of American college students involved in Palestine solidarity activism by doxing them, placing quotes by them that make them look unemployable, preventing them from having careers. And now they're targeting me. And what they were trying to do was to present me as someone who is not a journalist, who is there to honor Khamenei, that I was there to pay homage to him, and that I'm an extremist, in order to separate me from the credentialed, established media and to compel the Trump administration to target me based on my opinions. So these 4 Americans traveled to honor Ali Khamenei. Actually, no, I traveled there to report from my point of view, and you can see nothing but pure reporting and pure factual journalism at the Grayzone since I traveled there. A leader who wanted to destroy America at his funeral. And I'm there with Jackson Hinkle, Christopher Halali, and Kala Walsh. One of them, and is elected an American official. Chris Halali holds some position in Vermont, which you don't really have to campaign for. Yeah, I've actually never met Kala Walsh or Christopher Halali. I know Jackson. He's been around alternative media circles for years, so we both know him. And yeah, they're attacking them. I'm the editor of the Grayzone, a far left site known for its positive coverage of the Chinese, Russian, and Venezuelan governments. Now he is among the Americans honoring Iran's supreme leader. And then they link to a post where I'm basically just reporting on what's going on and what my conversations with people at the Mosala, the Grand Mosque, were like. So once that went up, I could pretty much assume, because the Trump administration had gathered lists of students to deport from Canary Mission who are green card holders, that I would be targeted with some form of repression. on my way back. And then Laura Loomer enters the chat. Laura Loomer being the victim of several botched facial surgery experiments, who has been Baker acted and involuntarily committed to various mental institutions by her family, and is accused of heinous acts by various men and former colleagues, which could constitute crimes. I'm someone who has not committed a crime, and she's accusing me of criminal activity. And she has been a close ally of Trump. I don't know if they allow her to ride on Air Force One anymore, but she's responsible for Trump firing numerous holdovers from previous administrations, including the top Iran expert at the NSC, Nate Swanson, who had warned that Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz if it were attacked, something Trump seemed surprised by and said, I didn't expect them to do it. Well, here's Laura Loomer's attack on me. I'm sorry you all have to see her face. Max Blumenthal, an American citizen, one of the leading communist voices in America. Am I one of the leading communist voices in America? I think.
News to me.
Yeah.
But
I don't
she
know.
called for you to be subject to a heavily armed pre-dawn raid on your family's home.
Yes, that comes next, I think,
Yeah.
after I respond. But she says, like, I went to mourn the death of Iran's barbaric supreme leader. And then she sort of links me to Joe Kent in some way and said that Heather Kaiser writes for the Grayzone. Yeah.
Because she wrote one article, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
I think that.
Before I think Joe Kent had anything to do with government, but whatever. I like that I'm considered influential. So yeah, I responded to Laura Loomer there. When you respond to Laura Loomer, it's like you're preparing. It's like, I don't know. It's like just preparing to go dumpster diving or something, but you just have to do it because like you got to eat. This is my response because like I didn't.
You got to glove up.
Like I put Khamenei's leadership in proper context, and the Islamic Republic deserves respect as a normal government. The U.S. should have normal relations with the Islamic Republic. That's my position. My position is sort of like the position the Leverets took in their book, Going to Tehran. This is the way to avoid the terrible conflict we're in. But I did not go and meet him and bow to him or whatever they said or kiss his coffin. I certainly respect and understand the pain of those who did, but that's just not what I did. I'm a journalist with my opinions, and you all know what my opinions are. My work speaks for itself. Here's what Laura Loomer did with someone who you could probably say is a child molester. Laura Loomer went on a paid propaganda junket to Modi's India. She was being courted because she's close to Trump. She's basically an unregistered foreign lobbyist to honor the Dalai Lama, who is a longtime CIA asset. And he has openly compelled children to suck his tongue. There's video of him going, "Suck my tongue," as young children approach him. And she knew that he asks children to suck his tongue. Laura Loomer should have known that. I mean, maybe she doesn't know that because she's stupid and Billy, these foreign lobbies and all the lobbies that pay her basically tell her what to say.
She probably does because until about 2 weeks before this trip, she posted the most heinous things imaginable about India and, constantly posted about how horrible it smells and how disgusting the people there are. But then she had a change of heart when she went on this paid propaganda tour.
Well, here's this freakish Florida Frankenstein anti-Palestinian Alice Cooper impersonator paying homage to a borderline child molester who compels children to suck his tongue, who was a close associate of Keith Raniere, a sex cult leader from Nexium, who is in jail for life on several rape charges. I mean, this is the Epstein class in action, and they're accusing me of everything they do and worse. These are the criminals. And these are the people managing this architecture of repression. They're knaves, con artists, thieves, hustlers, sex pests, and perverts who are trying to jail other people for exposing their crimes. That's what it's about.
And she herself has, you know, I guess I can't call her a child molester, but she's pretty close. I mean, when she gets...
She's a man molester, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's video of her molesting a man.
Yeah.
So she responds and, you know, says, blah, 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 you rat-faced communist traitor. I went to India to speak for a conference. She's mad.
What?
She's whipped up into a petulant frenzy, Max Blumenthal, you're a shill for Islam and communism, and I hope you're raided in a heavily armed raid. You need an editor by the FBI at 5 a.m. and that Secretary Rubio strips you of your passport for aiding the Iranian regime as they chant death to America. I was aiding them. And what else does she wish? I hope Scott Bessent investigates how you paid for your trip to Iran, or if it was given to you by Iran and IRGC supporters. So you're charged and prosecuted. So she wants me jailed and blah, blah, blah. So this is pretty much like, you know, she's setting the stage for what happened next.
Yeah. You know, for the record, when I went to Iran, we paid for that flight. You know, it was not paid for by the Ayatollah. So Scott Bessent, if you're listening, you know, for the record,
we paid for our...
Well, I'm sure she can't say the same about her trip to see the...
She rode business, you know, she rode business class and like was in one of those beds or whatever. I rode economy. I was like this the whole flight. Like I had neck pain, lumbar pain. That's the flight I paid for. But it just doesn't even deserve to be dignified. I should say though, you know, she's calling for me to be swatted. I have been swatted thanks to the Trump administration. I had my house surrounded in 2019 by DC cops because the allies of the Trump administration, who were like proxies of the fake Venezuelan government of Juan Guaido, falsely accused me of assault. And they threw me in jail.
Marco Rubio stormtroopers.
Yeah, Marco Rubio's stormtroopers. And they threw me in jail for 2 days. But it, you know, it's kind of terrifying to have your house surrounded, to have them banging on your door with a warrant based on nothing, of totally false accusation that they didn't investigate at all, come into your house. And, you know, then I was, you know, I went through the whole DC jail system for 48 hours, and then they dropped the charges soon after because they were completely fake, based on nothing. And this is what the Trump administration has been doing. So she's calling for another SWAT raid. And then she, well, you know, her and Canary Mission, by the way, is based in Jerusalem. All of its staffers are based in Jerusalem. They work for a nonprofit called Megamat Shalom, which is the cover for Canary Mission, which has been funded heavily by the Wexner Foundation of Les Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's best friend, the Victoria's Secret magnate. The Wexner Foundation had Jeffrey Epstein as a trustee for many years. So essentially, Canary Mission is connected to Epstein. It's the whole Epstein class that's coming for me. And it looks like they managed to get DHS, which is run by Mark Wayne Mullen, a military imposter, someone who is a former MMA fighter and plumber who pretended to be a military veteran, who replaced Christine Noem, who had to leave the DHS because her husband was impersonating her and stuffing his shirt with like breasts and sending pictures of himself, basically impersonating his deportation bimbo wife to other people. She steps down, so this military imposter comes in. I mean, you can't even make it up how many crooks and knaves are in charge. And I get on my flight in Istanbul, get my boarding pass, and it has the 4 S's on it, secondary screening. So I was waiting for secondary screening when I landed at Dulles on July 10th. It's all biometric now, by the way. Did you notice that when you came in? Like, you don't even hand your passport to some officer.
No, you go stare at it into a camera and it either flashes green, like you're okay, or it gives you a little X, like you have to go talk to some officer. And then when you talk to the other officer, then they say, oh, yeah, gotta head over that way. And they put your passport into a little red box so that you can't use it. You can't go anywhere until you've dealt with secondary screening and you've been detained and questioned.
So I go to secondary screening. My passport gets red boxed because I got the X on my biometric, Philip K. Dick pre-crime face. And ultimately, after some time, I'm met at a metal table by 2 young Customs and Border Patrol officers who were at the bottom of the food chain and kept referring to instructions from their quote unquote managers. They're peppering me with questions, but in order to cover up the political nature of the interrogation, where they're probing about, they asked me, like, was I paid to give interviews or to conduct interviews in Iran? Like, they actually tried to work that in. Like, yeah, I'm going to go 20 hours on an economy flight and then go into an area which could potentially become a war zone in order to collect money to conduct interviews. Like, I can't make money as a journalist in the US, and that's what I have to do.
Collect money from one of the most heavily sanctioned economies in the world.
Yeah.
Where the average salary is like $200 a month.
Yeah, where you can't like conduct business with US credit cards or whatever. I'm going to just go there to collect money where I interview people, and like they're going to give me like some massive payday to interview the mayor or something like that. Like, they can't deliver those people to mainstream outlets as well. I mean, it's just the line of questioning was so absurd that, I mean, I almost couldn't believe it. And they kept asking me other things like, did you feel threatened there? Did anything make you feel threatened? And I said no. And they asked it again. And then they wanted to know if I have any plans to go back to Iran, because obviously the US government didn't want me there doing the reporting that I was doing, or the kind of reporting you were doing when you were there. That was my takeaway from that. But the questioning was basically useless and absurd. And then they demanded I open my devices. I open my phones. And I said, no, I'm not going to give you my passcode. So they detained my phones. Didn't really have much of a choice in that matter. My phones were taken. And they told me, we're going to hook them up to machines, and this should be done in a day. Well, it's been several days. They're not returning them. When they hook them up to machines, I assume they mean they're using Israeli Celebrite technology in order to get past the passcodes and invade my privacy and to learn more about my sources and methods, to violate my Fourth Amendment rights and to violate my First Amendment rights. And, they told me, you have no rights here. They said that to me. And that is well known. So I'm working on trying to recover those phones, but this was a complete violation of privacy. It was political targeting, political harassment, because other reporters who were there, American reporters, have not been subjected to this treatment. This is due to my opinions and the nature of my factual reporting and our factual reporting at the Grayzone, which threatens Israel and the Israeli interests, which are the only elements that targeted me when I went to Iran and demanded my persecution.
It's due to your opinions, and it's due to the impact of your opinions. It's due to the fact that we are moving the needle, and that they're no longer able to control American domestic public opinion as it relates to the apartheid entity, which is why they're offloading all of their lawfare onto groups like the Canary Mission. They're offloading all of their intellectual heavy lifting onto groups like the Foundation for the Defense of the Democracies.
Yeah.
And then they're slipping in these morons like Kristi Noem, Mark Wayne Mullen, who are too stupid to tell the difference. And then, no one's the wiser. So it's really horrifying when you think about it. But it's hard not to laugh because these people are such comical sort of clown figures. It kind of disguises the dystopian nature of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the clowns are up front, but there are these grim operatives behind them who are determined to establish a dictatorship behind the guise of the liberal democratic traditions of post-1964 US or post-war US. It's almost like the perfect dictatorship, except the Trump administration is making it a little too obvious that what their intentions are. And this could become more clear with Donald Trump's national address on Thursday night as he attempts to invalidate the 2020 election on the basis of claims that Venezuela had interfered through the Smartmatic voting systems. That's another topic we've talked about before, that the Maduro raid, the Maduro abduction has been exploited to provide fodder for Trump's pet conspiracy theory. He's going to try to, I think, impeach the 2 Democratic Georgia senators. I mean, they're making it too obvious. And in targeting me, they are explicitly targeting journalism that Israel doesn't like. The mask is off.
Yeah.
I mean, the mask is off. Laura Loomer freaked out again today over our reporting.
I wish you would put the mask back on.
Yeah, that mask needs to go back on.
Yeah.
Some people don't have like the most perfect face or whatever, like, but there's something sort of charming about it. Like, there are people who are just like have faces that capture the decency of their personality or something noble about themselves. And
he is not one of them.
This is someone with just absolutely no redeeming characteristics at all. Like, even Donald Trump is sort of funny and can be entertaining, even as he threatens to, destroy entire nations. This is just someone there's no charisma there. There's nothing entertaining or funny or charming about it. And she
raw Zionist influence.
Yeah. It's like she's
like Israel.
It's like Evelyn Lafarge meets Leatherface's daughter. It's a lot like Israel today. But she freaked out again on us and claimed because we broke the story on Fergie Chambers. I don't think the U.S. government wanted that story out. The mainstream press hasn't even touched it, as far as I can tell. It is an outrage. It's an outrageous miscarriage of justice. And we saw a sealed indictment and were able to expose this raid that was supposed to be conducted under cover of darkness of an American citizen in Spain. to prosecute him for 30 years for basically sending humanitarian aid to Gaza, just like the Holy Land Foundation, who
which
are
is
innocent.
now apparently considered material support for terrorism.
So what she said is that there's a conspiracy between, here it is. I mean,
the
this is
Assangification of global, American power. Just, we can reach out and steal you anywhere you are and kidnap you.
Yeah. And so we exposed that. And here's what she says. The DOJ has been completely penetrated by sympathizers and supporters of Islamic Jihad. This is very dangerous. Why is anyone at the DOJ leaking sealed indictments to Max Blumenthal, who is just in Iran for Khamenei's funeral?
And she
What?
tagged the
Oh,
aide.
yeah. Todd Blanche, the MAGA tool at the Department of Justice. Like what? The number 3 person at the Department of Justice is Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon's law firm is currently representing a registered foreign agent for Israel called Show Faith by Works. I mean, the whole Department of Justice from all at the top are basically servants of Israel. And she's saying there's a secret Iranian conspiracy to defend Fergie Chambers by leaking things to me, who's a secret Iranian agent. But this just goes to show how much our reporting is threatening these maniacal, demented elements in Trump's inner circle who claim to be calling shots and calling for my repression. And it just goes back to my original point, which is I was persecuted and I was interrogated and my devices were seized at Dulles International Airport by CBP because of our reporting, because of my journalism, and because of who it threatens. And that's just what it comes down to.
Exactly.
I don't have anything more to say about that.
No, they can't oppose us on the basis of the facts. They can't disprove anything that we've said. So it's all personal attacks and insults, and it's all attempts to intimidate us and silence us and demand and run to the teacher, oh please, FBI, won't you please conduct a illegal and illegitimate heavily armed raid on these people I don't like. It's so pathetic, honestly. And if she wasn't, again, like such a ridiculous, clownish character, it would be easier to spot just how insidious this is. But because she is such a bizarre freak show, you can lose sight of how evil what she's doing is.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better. And you look at who's in the Trump administration. I mean, Pam Bondi was the top lobbyist for Qatar when she comes into the DOJ. She flies down to Florida to meet Miriam Adelson, the Israeli intelligence cutout and top donor to Trump, as Miriam Adelson demands new laws to crack down on speech critical of Israel. Kash Patel was lobbying for Qatar. Trump's flying around on a $400 million jet given to him by Qatar. That's Air Force One. Israel's running him when the Gulf states are not. Jared Kushner's investment firm is totally funded by the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Laura Loomer's running ops for Big Pharma, for Joseph Schwartz, apparently, the Medicare fraudster, for all sorts of dark and devious billionaires. Brad Parscale, the former Trump campaign manager, is a federally registered foreign agent for Israel who's paying half of the MAGA influencers you still see supporting Trump on Twitter, including Eyal Yacobi, to attack us and to undermine any initiative by the Trump administration to end the Iran war. It's all foreign influence, all from top to bottom at the Trump administration. And they're trying to claim that I'm some kind of Iranian agent. Like they're focusing on me. I'm the only one who's facing the wrath of law enforcement. They should all be jailed. They should all be jailed for treason. Not to mention all of the sex crimes they're accused of.
Yeah, the video of Laura Loomer herself, I can't get over it. Just it really shows you who she is. Just this absolutely sleazy, disgusting, foul creature, just like desperate for some like young guy to get in her pants, and he's clearly totally uninterested, because how could you possibly be interested? These are the sex pests and sex criminals, and they
Someone
just
should set up a
pure
hotline.
projection from the 7K crew.
Someone should set up a hotline for the victims of her.
Victims of Laura Loomer.
The victims of LauraLoomer.org.
Maybe Milo Yiannopoulos can get on this.
Well, yeah, Milo was her former friend and associate. I think he was her comms director on her failed congressional campaign, and he left for some very disturbing reasons. So maybe he can lead the charge there, along with Laura Southern, who's also accused her. But I'm gonna stay focused on the facts, which clearly are infuriating the Trump administration and its Israeli masters. We're going to stay focused on the facts. What are the facts of Lindsey Graham's death? I don't think we know.
It's an open question still. The jury is out on exactly what happened. It's a kind of a strange timeline. What is clear is that in his time on this planet, his all too long time, he spent basically every waking moment desperately trying to find a new home for a bomb, a new place to go murder innocent civilians. Never met a war he didn't like, and never met a peace deal he didn't hate. He went to his grave doing what he loved, which was trying to murder Russians, trying to murder people in some far-flung part of the world that doesn't really have very much to do with the average American's existence. So, he has that going for him. But I know we have quite a few videos, kind of a greatest hits compilation of just some of the worst of Lindsey Graham.
I mean, this is the guy. Yeah, go ahead.
No, we were all told that, we have to, the usual, they constantly intone this. And anytime one of these war criminals kicks the bucket, is that, you may disagree with his politics, but you have to respect, the man, you have to respect his family. As though these people respected the families of the hundreds of thousands in Gaza who they were constantly calling to nuke.
He took his niece to Disney World, and he took all of the attacks and mockery for being at Disney World, but he just wanted to show his niece a good time. He was a good man. And he didn't make what Greta Van Susteren, who's at the Israeli controlled Newsmax, said he actually wasn't making a lot of money off being in the Senate. He's one of the only senators who wasn't making money. That just shows what a psycho he is. He spent his last years like masturbating to the blood of children, like
crowdsourcing genocide for the love of the game.
Just like, I mean, we don't even need to describe it. We don't even need to be descriptive. We can just show what he was like, but he was doing it for the love. He was calling for the nuking of Gaza, like the mass slaughter of an occupied people, for the love.
So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose, and work with them to minimize casualties.
Look at his eyes. There's nothing there.
For America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war. Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state. So when we were
slamming his pencil on the desk, it's like, just can't get enough.
There's it's endless. this is more. Yeah, he's called for nuking Gaza several times, nuking other countries.
October 7th. Many people in this part of the world say what happened in Gaza does not align with Christian values. Killing children, killing mothers,
Well, to be honest
killing
with
families
you,
who are not militants.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all.
Why?
What did we do in World War II? Did we think 1 minute about starving the Germans? Did we bomb every city into smithereens? So this
You
is a
compare
war. No,
October
this is
7th to World War II.
Yes, I am. This is an absolute existential threat to the Jewish people.
Mm.
What happened on October the 7th was 1,200 people were slaughtered, raped, and murdered and filmed by radical Islamists who would kill every Jew if they could, to the world. If you don't understand this is a threat to Israel's
And then they
survival,
flattened Gaza.
just flatten it. We flattened Berlin. We flattened Tokyo. Were we wrong to drop an atomic bomb to end the Japanese reign of terror? Were we?
Yes.
Actually,
So,
we were.
in my view, if I were Israel, I would have probably done it the same way.
He's got these
Without
like
military
bloodshot
victory,
eyes.
there is no hope of breaking radicalism. We flattened Germany. We flattened Japan.
All right. Well, it goes on. I mean,
Everyone talks about his sexual attraction to young prostituted men, but no one talks about.
we don't know about that, or if that even he could have been asexual. We don't know anything about his.
But we know you can tell there's clearly some kind of sexual attraction to like death.
Yes, yes. Well, it's sort of like it's sort of like transferring repressed sexual energy into a desire to explode other human beings, because he himself can gain no orgasmic release. This is a common feature of sociopaths and psychopaths who have tormented humanity throughout history.
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham should be remembered alongside other figures like Hitler.
Yeah.
Although some, claim he's not repressed. I mean, yeah, he may not have been repressed. He may have overindulged, but he certainly did not repress his desire for mass death, including the death of supposed allies. I mean, here's where he gave away the whole game of the Ukraine proxy war.
Yeah.
I like the structural path we're on here. As long as we help Ukraine with the weapons they need and the economic support, they will fight to the last person.
So basically, fight to the last Ukrainian. We just keep giving them weapons and they just keep dying, rushing into minefields, trenches, dying to kill Russians.
I like it. I like that. How could you not? How could any red-blooded American patriot not like that?
We have this Hannity interview where he says the war is basically about money.
Yeah.
I don't know what the timestamp is there.
Skip to about 30 seconds on that one.
All right. This is another moment. Why is there such a complex person, Lindsey Graham? This is a real moment that shows the humanity of Lindsey Graham.
A day. Well, we're 1,000 days into this war. Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of.
All right. Well, so fight to the last Ukrainian and then take all of their resources, because they won't have any sovereignty or really any people left. Lindsey Graham's been at this for a long time. Do you remember, was it 2017? He went with his close friend, John McCain, the late warmongering neocon of the Senate, and Amy Klobuchar to the Donbass to meet with a Ukrainian militia. And this is, where Lindsey Graham charted the path to the most destructive and devastating U.S. proxy war in history.
Your fight is our fight.
Ваша боротьба – це наша боротьба.
2017 will be the year of offense. All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
So he's basically setting the stage for the proxy war as the U.S. was already arming Ukraine. And
it's all these Air Force guys too. They're McCain and him. It's these guys that like their ideal war is just like delivering death from 40,000 feet and never ever having to get their hands dirty and deal with the consequence. You know, I mean, McCain actually did while he was bombing, I think, what was it, a light bulb factory, who was shot down. So he actually did see the consequences on the other hand, which is why he became an advocate against torture. Lindsey Graham never had to suffer any consequences for his warmongering. So he never had any kind of epiphany or, you know, any pings of conscience.
He was just a JAG officer in the Air Force. He never saw combat.
Right.
He never saw the horrors of war.
Yeah,
but
JAG
he fantasized
in the least combat involved.
Yeah. But he fantasized about death nonetheless. Here he is.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
The best money we've ever spent.
Best money we've ever spent. He said the same thing about the Iran war.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Ever spent. You know, it's better than spending money on housing. It's better than the Pell Grants. It's better than the money that created community colleges across America out of the Great Society. It's well, they don't like WIC.
You know, but school lunches for school kids.
No, bad money. The highway system that Eisenhower built. No, the best money we've ever spent is to kill Russians. That's Lindsey Graham. And again, he wasn't apparently making money off this.
He said the same exact thing about Iran when he was asked whether all of the economic damage that we've incurred was worth it. He had the same exact turn of phrase.
Yeah.
And I think that video is in there as well.
Yeah, here it is. Maria Bartiromo. That's a voice you can't forget.
This $1 billion a day. Oil prices up 27% in a week. You've got the president wanting a $1.5 trillion defense budget in 27. The idea that the Pentagon is about to come to you for $50 billion on these strikes to Iran. How are you going to answer?
Best money ever spent. Best money ever spent. Best money ever spent. Best money ever spent.
Best money ever spent. Lindsey Graham wants mass death in Iran. He wants mass death in Russia. He is willing to see Ukraine fight to the last man. He wants Gaza to be nuked. He said Gaza should be flattened. Guess where else he wants mass death?
On the subject of North Korea, the president has said, we'll handle North Korea. We're going to be able to handle them. It will be handled. In your opinion, over the next year, is it more likely that there is some sort of military conflict on the Korean Peninsula, whether that's a surgical strike or something larger, or is it more likely that North Korea will cement its place as a nuclear threat in the world?
Well, this is the ultimate question. I know it's early in the morning, but President Trump has said, I will not allow them to get an ICBM with a nuclear weapon on top to hit America. They're headed that way. The only way they're going to change if they believe there's a credible threat of military force on the table. The Chinese are miscalculating Trump and so are the North Koreans. He's got to choose between homeland security and regional stability. Japan, South Korea, China would all be in the crosshairs of a war if we started one with North Korea. But if they get a missile, they can hit California, maybe other parts of America.
But every military expert says there is no good military option.
They're wrong. There is a military option to destroy North Korea's program and North Korea itself.
There it is. Destroy North Korea itself. Just totally destroy the entire country where we've already committed. The United States has already committed genocide, just wiping out 20% of the North Korean population during the Korean War.
Best money ever spent.
So Lindsey Graham was in Ukraine after Marco Rubio ordered U.S. officials not to travel there because of the threat they faced, the physical threat they faced to their own safety from escalation by Russia as Ukraine attacks deep in Russian cities, including Moscow, with drone swarms. He visited Ukraine. This is what, July 11th. So he visited on July 10th to assure Zelensky of the support of the U.S. He was shown a secret drone manufacturing facility in Kiev. The facility was hit after strikes by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Without warning, 6 missiles struck 2 manufacturing facilities in Kiev. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed strikes on drone sites, which started a huge fire. There were no interceptions. And he left Ukraine, apparently, but did he leave Ukraine on a flight, which meant he had to take like a train out and then a flight, or did he leave in a body bag?
$1 million question. And I love that picture of him, by the way, just grinning ear to ear while he poses with that drone.
Yeah.
Find someone who looks at you the way that Lindsey Graham looks at a deadly munition.
Here's the conspiracy theory that we can't confirm. He's in Kiev meeting with Zelensky, pushing a Russia sanctions bill, which would guarantee escalation of the war, which has, in claiming it as White House backing, it didn't quite yet. Then he posts Trump says, 1,000 missiles locked and loaded threat after, there are public threats on Trump's life from the Khamenei funeral. And the funeral raged all week. Graham suddenly dies on Capitol Hill. There's a emergency personnel response to a cardiac arrest call. His office releases the brief and sudden illness statement. No cause of death. It was some part of his body exploded, according to Trump. It was like an aortic rupture. He was 72. His father, it's true, his father did die at age 69 of a heart attack. And when you're in your early 70s and you're traveling overseas as much as he does, it does put a lot of stress on your heart. You're traveling across time zones. So, perhaps that was it.
It was a short visit, too. And so,
a
20-hour trip there, a 20-hour trip back.
And you can deduce all the questions and contradictions in the story from there. I mean, there are a few odd components here. And I'll produce my own conclusion. We don't really have a clear timeline of his trip. We don't really, I haven't seen a very clear itinerary or the manifest of his travel, but this is TMZ. They're on the scene. Exclusive photos show Lindsey Graham being carted out of his residence while surrounded by EMS workers administering first aid. We can't see his body. We can't really see him. We don't know what condition he's really in here. And then there's this call to the cops. This is like from an account that tracks police scanners. Radio traffic from response to Senator Graham's home. Emergency radio traffic indicates that Graham suffered chest pains before going into cardiac arrest, blah, blah, blah. The radio traffic from openmhc.com indicates that the 9/11 caller last night was a woman in Baltimore. The crew from Engine 7 arrived and could not get anyone to answer the door. He was alone. They apparently forced entry into his home. The radio traffic gives the impression that Senator Graham may not have immediately been in cardiac arrest when they arrived, but there's no confirmation of that information. And then there's this timeline of the call. Okay, let's go back. A woman in Baltimore makes the call. Who's the woman in Baltimore? Lindsey Graham didn't live with any women. I don't think he lived with anyone. So how was this call made? It's weird.
It's very strange.
Here's some other questions that are being sent to me by a very close colleague upstairs. Yeah, the question of single childless man, no one who called 911. Well, it said a woman in Baltimore. What was the timeline of his trip? Did he plan on staying in Ukraine for fewer than 24 hours? There's no clear timeline of when he left Ukraine, when he landed, and when he arrived home, considering the drone factory he visited was attacked. There was also a hotel that was engulfed in flames after Russian strikes, I believe on that day or within that same timeline, called City Hotel. Maybe you can pull it up, but I'm reading from City Hotel's website, which bills itself as having a stylish blend of business and comfort. It looks like a very luxurious hotel where a U.S. diplomat or senator might stay. Wait, I have it here. I actually have the headline here. Russian drones hit Kiev hotel as capital braces for massive overnight attack. And this is City Hotel after being hit with a Russian drone strike. Why would a Russian drone target a hotel? Well, hotels were hit in Kuwait. They were hit in Bahrain. They were hit in the United Arab Emirates because certain intelligence sources, possibly Iranian intelligence, had determined that U.S. intelligence and military personnel were staying in those hotels, and they were hit with Shahed drones, accurately causing casualties. So did Russia gain wind of an important individual who reveled in the mass killing of Russians and was pushing new legislation to kill more Russians being at this hotel? I don't know. Maybe it was an accident.
If there were any journalists left in Ukraine, real journalists left in Ukraine, this would be quite an inviting opportunity to go and interview employees, former employees, people who worked around that hotel or near it.
The hotel, I should say, though, the hotel could have been hit several days before Lindsey Graham was there. I mean, we could be confusing this with another incident. But there are hotels that were hit within this general timeline, and we don't have a clear timeline of his trip to Ukraine. It takes 20 hours to get there and return to DC.
Well, you can't fly there. The airspace is closed, so you have to travel via train, and most Westerners do so via Poland, from what I understand. And so the calculation that most people have been making is that there are only a handful of trains. I think 2 trains per day.
Yeah.
So he was, on one of those 2 trains, and then it's a very long flight from Poland. So, it's at least a 8 to 10 hour flight. So between the 2 journeys, it's not a short, quick trip.
So there is a record of hotels being struck. That was, I think, on July 2nd. A drone factory he visited was reportedly struck. He may have just got out in time, got back to DC, and had a heart attack because he does travel a lot, and traveling is very taxing, as I can attest to. I do not think Vladimir Putin would authorize a strike targeting a figure like Lindsey Graham, because if you look at the way that Putin is dealing with Trump, he's refusing to use harsh language against Trump, even as Trump is authorizing drone strikes deep inside Moscow, causing a fuel crisis. They're offloading so much diplomacy to Kirill Dmitriev, who's really tried to attach himself to the Trump administration. Like even Lavrov is complaining about that. I think that Putin sees that after Trump comes in, there's going to be a Democrat who's extremely hostile to Russia, and this is the last chance. But I think Trump is already taking the war to new levels. So I just don't see that happening. However, there have been all these strikes in Kiev that Lindsey Graham was close to. It could be that he may have suffered some kind of heart incident fleeing from those strikes or strikes nearby. Either way, if that happened, it's an explosive story because the U.S. does not have the munitions left to actually retaliate. If they were to say, oh, Russia targeted Lindsey Graham and we're blaming Russia, the U.S. doesn't have the munitions to take Russia on directly because it is so focused on Iran fighting this war for Israel and in defending Israel, providing Israel with all the interceptors. There's so few interceptions of these Russian strikes. So it says so much about U.S. empire. Then what were FBI agents doing at Lindsey Graham's house?
Trump doesn't seem to know. I mean, he's suggested that there was nothing fishy happening there, and he's openly questioned, what's going on,
Yeah. He's like, why were they all these FBI agents at his house? I think, maybe we should go down there tomorrow.
Maybe we can get Laura Luna to let us in.
I don't know if she's on good terms with Cash for some reason, but I mean, they're swarming his home. Were they removing potentially embarrassing documents or classified documents that he was holding? Or were they investigating his death? What were they doing there?
It's good to see he's gotten a handful more bouquets of flowers deposited there. When I last saw, there was just one single bouquet.
Yeah, maybe some like Iranian monarchists will go mourn him. Like Goldie Gamari will go to his house and mourn him. Don't see any mourners there. I'm not celebrating his death. I'm denouncing his life. I'm denouncing the way that he lived his life. It's a righteous.
43 million people outside his house. So
he's not my uncle, He's not like my crazy uncle that I have to mourn. He's someone who's responsible. He's a soft-handed rosé sipping genocidaire who's responsible for masses of deaths of innocent people.
And he's probably in the hot place now because of it.
If you believe in that sort of thing.
If you do.
If you don't, he's in atheist hell. We'll follow up on that. I mean, we're in the DC, we're in the DMV, so maybe we can, go ask questions. We should definitely go ask questions of legislators about Section 219. But,
the mainstream media doesn't seem to be too intent on doing it. If anyone else were doing it, I would say, we can sit on our hands, but it doesn't seem like it's happening. No one seems to be even slightly interested in the permanent, inextricable integration of our entire military intelligence apparatus with the world's #1 rogue state.
Well, let's close on a positive note. We've been, bearing witness to some really dark times here for the past 2.5 hours. And this is sort of breaking. The Senate has voted against the NDAA 50-46, denying Israel a merger with the U.S. The 46 who voted in favor, yes, should face charges for treason and should be treated as the traitors they are.
Is this the Clutcher vote that former Representative Kucinich was mentioning?
Yes, this is the motion to invoke cloture on the motion to proceed to the consideration of Senate Bill 4784, which is the NDAA. So, yeah, bam. Shut down.
For now.
This is Joe Kent, our IRGC secret employee at the Grayzone. Actually, no, Joe Kent, former director of counterterrorism in the Trump administration, who resigned because of witnessing the level of Israeli control over the Trump administration. This is good news, but the fight is not over. The Senate just rejected the NDAA that would merge our military with Israel's, which will now proceed to the House. Call your senators and representatives and tell them not to support the NDAA until the merger with Israel Section 219 is removed. The Senate switchboard is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. So, yeah. If you are an American citizen, light up the switchboard.
Let's take down that number.
All right. Well, Thursday night, we will expect Trump to announce that Venezuela under Maduro interfered in the 2020 election. It's reaching sublime levels of absurdity. He's going to be basing that on testimony provided to him by a coerced witness named Hugo Pollo Carvajal, who is the former director of military intelligence in Venezuela, who was turned by the CIA, which had accused him of narco trafficking or narco terrorism. And he was supposed to be the star witness against Maduro, but he has no credibility. And the way that he's trying to finagle a pardon or commutation of his sentence is by indulging Donald Trump's pet conspiracy theory, which is that a Venezuelan voting machine company called Smartmatic was used to fix the vote in states like Georgia in the U.S. Smartmatic was actually owned by opponents of Hugo Chavez and opponents of Maduro, and part of the motivation for abducting Maduro is to compel him to testify to this. You heard it here first. We'll be waiting for Trump's insane announcement on Thursday night. And we're also going to be in between then taking action to get my phone back from the Israeli-controlled Department of Homeland Security. And I'll be updating you about that, and we'll be back very soon at the Grayzone. Wyatt, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Operation Get Max's phone back is a go. Operation Prevent Israel from dominating our military intelligence apparatus formally, not just informally, is also a go. Don't tell Laura Loomer or our vast network of DOJ informants, but it's all happening here.
Victims of Laura Loomer mail hotline, not yet a go, but it's a proposal. It's an idea. The Senate switchboard number is in the chat. If you want to give them a call, if you don't want the United States to merge with the satanic state of Israel, that's there. And we are out. That's it. We'll see you all soon. Wyatt, welcome back to the land of the free. It's good to have you here. And we're looking forward to more reporting from you. Thanks to former Representative Dennis Kucinich for joining us and for all of his efforts against the U.S.-Israeli military merger. And once again, we'll be back here soon. Subscribe, like this stream, sign up on Substack, get all of our work in your inbox free, support us on Patreon, and support us in any way you see fit. We're out. Peace.